Today we're talking about death certificates. There's a lot of information that you can find within death certificates. I'm going to show you how to read between the lines right now. Now keep in mind though that death certificates in the United States really didn't start until around 1909. So if you're trying to find a death certificate before then, good luck. But the reality is that death certificates are really helpful in a lot of times identifying parents, identifying spouses, identifying, kind of those records that can help tie people together and help, sometimes it's the glue that holds it all together. Death certificates are often the first thing that a person finds when they're working on their family history. And so, if you're doing your research properly, you're working from death to birth. And so death certificates a lot of times, and death records in general, are usually, you're going to find more about a person's death and their lifetime at death than you are going to find in probably just about any other type of record. But today we're just going to focus on a death certificate and all the little details and clues that you can find in it. So what I've done here is, this is a scan of the death certificate that I have, but it's kind of grungy and it's hard to read. So I've recreated it and kind of animated portions of it so that we can focus on one area at a time. So what I've done here is I have recreated this, and I am showing that usually it is the State Department, whatever it is, in this case it's Kansas. And it's often the Office of Vital Statistics or something similar. Sometimes you may see the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Vital Records, something similar. And then, of course, it's going to say death certificate. And then right after that, the first section is going to be about the person who died. Now, also keep in mind that you want to record this state file number, whatever the record number is, and add it to your research notes. Now, you're going to have the descendant's legal name, and here we have the last name prior to first marriage. That's kind of a modern day thing, all right? It used to say maiden name. Here we have the death date, age, date of birth, in this case 1876, she's female, and a social security number. All of this information is important to add to your research notes. Next up is the address. Now you can take this address and put it in your research notes and in your timeline. So if you're on Ancestry, take that information and add it as a fact for residency on your timeline. Now, if you're lucky enough, we'll find birth information and whether, they were in the armed forces. In this case, she wasn't. She was widowed. And if there was a surviving spouse, if this was a male, you might see a female's maiden name here. Now, this is where we're getting some cool information. Bingo! We're getting the parents' information, the father and the mother. Now, I just want to pause for a second because the information that you're seeing here so far is kind of a no-brainer. If you've seen, a death certificate before, you're kind of like, Connie, what's new here? Some of the things you need to think about, though, is this is a death certificate. So as we're working through that, you may find that there is no parents here, that the person who was the informant on this may not have known who the parents were. You may have misspellings here. You never know. So I'm just saying, if you get this, be lucky that you did. Next, you may find an address or the nursing home that the person died in the location. You also may find information about the cemetery. These are two locations, the nursing home and the cemetery, where you may find information about your ancestor, more records to look for. The next section talks about occupation and industry, and this is something I hadn't seen before. Education and ancestry. Now, I see race on them all the time, but the decedent's ancestry I thought was kind of interesting. We also have the informant's name, and bingo, this is information that we can use. In this case, this was a son and where he's located. Now, this is where we want to really evaluate for a moment. The informant is a son. So anytime we have someone who is not a witness to the event, now he may have been a witness to the death, so that might be primary information within this death certificate, but he could not have been a witness to her birth, so her birth information, her birth date and her birthplace may be secondary information. And keep in mind that this person may be distraught at the time that they're filling out this information, And so they may not get it right, or they may feel like they're under pressure. You know, somebody's sitting there writing this stuff down, and gosh, do I need to go dig out the family files to figure out exactly where this person was born or who the parents were? And so in this case, it was a son, so he probably knew who his grandparents were and probably got it right. Just keep in mind that the mindset of the person who is the informant on a death certificate is critical to how accurate the information is going to be in the death certificate. We're not done yet, but I forgot to mention that there is a handout for this for the information access level channel members and the patrons at the whatever level that is, and the Academy members. Make sure you get hooked up with one of those so that you can get the handout. Information and links are in the description box below. Toward the bottom of a death certificate, you may find some other conditions that had to do with how a person died or an autopsy. In this case, there was not a lot of other information, but had there been an injury like a car accident or a fire or something, you may have other information about an injury because this becomes a legal document and may have to be proven one way or another about how a person was injured and ultimately died. Lastly, you're going to have the medical certifier and a date of certification and a date that it was filed with the state registrar, which in this case was the day after Nanny died. Okay, so we've learned a lot from this death certificate. We have her name and information, the residence where she died, which you could put on a map, and a timeline in your timeline on, say, Ancestry or in your research notes as to where she was living when she died. And by the way, then you can go look for census records. You could then go look for city directories, all kinds of records. That data just from the address alone could help you tie that address to other records with the same address so that you know you have the same person, right? Then you have a birth date, which may or may not be right, depending on the accuracy of the informant. You have a death date, which probably is pretty accurate because it's probably the official who signed it, the doctor, or the nursing home person or whoever, that they certified that that was the date and time of death. So more than likely that is accurate. You have funeral home information that you can go after. You might be able to go to the funeral home and see if you can get the records. And the records are going to show other family members because it's usually family members who are paying for the funeral. You could go to the cemetery and do the same thing. Get records from the cemetery and see if you can find information from other family members who paid for the funeral, who paid for the cemetery plot, that kind of stuff. You also have information about cause of death, which may give you some information about your DNA research or just some genetic information about different types of maybe heart disease or something that's running in the family. You have 3 generations in this one document. In this document, we had the son who was the informant, then we have the deceased, and then we have her parents. So we've got 3 generations. Now we know who the son Kenneth's grandparents are, which was kind of cool. And we have a lot of information that we can sit there and create a new research plan just from the addresses. Go to Find a Grave and look and see if there's any information on Find a Grave from other family members who may have put in information. There's a ton of things that you can do now just from this one document. How would you feel if you could resolve some of those brick walls in your family tree? Or maybe you're just getting started in genealogy. What if you had the skills to prove your family history, taking you back generation by generation, time and time again? Hi, my name is Connie Knox, and here at the Genealogy TV Academy, I help genealogy enthusiasts like you break down brick walls by learning smart research methods. I help you find the records and I help you get organized so that you can share your family history with your family and future generations. I do this through a monthly membership course. There are 2 components to this. Now there is the self-guided platform where you can take the courses on your own time. And well, I'm adding 1 new lesson per month. And then the live Zoom meetings where you can watch a live presentation in the virtual classroom and participate in the discussion after the presentation. Now, if you can't make one of the live sessions, don't worry. All the programs are recorded and are added in the course platform following the presentation. So, are you ready to learn some new skills to help prove your family history, get organized, and break down some of those brick walls? All right, well, if you want to learn more, hit the Get Start button to learn a little bit more about pricing and how you can get signed up. All right, we'll see you in the virtual classroom. Hey, I'm trying to record here. Can you go somewhere else and play, please? Thanks. Excuse me, Miles. It's Miles. It's kind of hard to work with you coming in and chewing on my microphone. No, please don't. And don't walk on my keyboard. You end up editing for me. If you want to become an editor, that's another story, okay? Be part of the video, but it's kind of hard to work with you here. And he lays down.